Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Ratia. So guys, today I'm going to recommend 5 genres of books for beginner readers. Now, if you're new to the art and science of reading, you just can't randomly pick up any book and start reading. Of course you can technically, but if you put a little bit of thought into the kinds of books that you pick up for reading as a beginner reader, your reading journey, your reading skills will improve, and it will be somewhat easier, somewhat less difficult to make that transition from the first stage of reading to the second stage of reading, and so on and so forth. So that's why in this book, I am going to talk about 5 different genres of books that you should definitely go for as a beginner reader. So the first genre of book that you should go for as a beginner reader are motivational books. Guys, I've done so many videos on motivational books separately as well, and combining a couple of books together as well, so you can check out those videos. I will include the links in the description section, but I cannot emphasize this enough that motivational books are the best deal for beginner readers. When you've just started reading, your vocabulary is limited and you do not understand, complex sentence structures, complex narrative patterns, all that would just go over your head. So motivational books, I think, are very, very beginner reader friendly, because most of these books, of course, exceptions are always there, but most motivational books are written in a very easy, lucid language, and you wouldn't find any complex sentence structures or complex narrative patterns, or very that overtly clever kind of storytelling. You wouldn't find those literary techniques and literary writing styles in motivational books generally. Also, motivational books make good use of storytelling, so the language is very conversational and animated, and it has a certain warmth about it, which makes it easier for beginner readers to sort of get drawn into the book. A lot of anecdotal stuff also you would find in motivational books. The writers are talking about their own experiences and how they got motivated to get up at 5 a.m. or do certain things or whatever. And motivational books are also very logically arranged, like not all of them, like I said, but most of them. So as a beginner reader, it would give you a lot of confidence actually to be able to complete a book without getting too much bogged down. So I think a motivational book is the perfect starting point for a beginner reader. Of course, the bonus point is that it would motivate you as well. But like I said, that when you are when you're at the beginning stage of your reading habits, then reading something which is less complex and which also gives you sort of confidence, and which also gives you motivation and inspiration, is something that will be a positive force in taking your reading journey forward. The second genre of books I would recommend to a beginner reader are classics. Now, classics, guys, of course, are not all that easy to read, and compared to motivational books, reading a classic would certainly be challenging, but I would still recommend classics to beginner readers, because classics, the kind of language they have, the kind of imagery, metaphors, the use of language is extremely innovative and sophisticated, and, classics can really help you improve your vocabulary, your creative writing skills, and, even your power of creative expression. Apart from that, reading a classic is always like, it gives me that feeling of sitting by a window with a cup of coffee, with a warm cup of coffee and a piece of nice cake, and staring at the sunrise or the sunset, or just looking at the mountains from outside the window. Classics give you that very cozy kind of feeling, and especially in today's world when we are bogged down by so much of complexities, I think the simplicity of classics and the quest for eternal truths that one sees in classic literature is something that can help us stay morally and ethically rooted, and also gives us some kind of emotional and psychological balance. It can act as an anchor, providing us with emotional and psychological equilibrium. So I would specially recommend classics for beginner readers. Like I said, that these are not easy to read. These will not be easy to read, but they will, sort of work wonders for your creative writing skills. So classics are a must read. Now, of course, there's a disclaimer that while choosing a classic, you have to keep in mind to not pick very difficult ones. Some classics are like, really complicated and difficult to read. You shouldn't, you should omit, you should skip those, but you should read, ones which are a kind of beginner friendly. A few suggestions that I can give you for classics are Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. You should definitely read Pride and Prejudice, and even other books by Jane Austen. They're all beginner reader friendly, be it Emma, Pride and Prejudice, or Sense and Sensibility, Mansfield Park. I've this thick volume of books of, all Jane Austen novels. So Jane Austen's works are great for a beginner reader. I would also recommend The Great Gatsby. The Great Gatsby is also beginner friendly. Then books like Little Women, The Christmas Carol, etc. I wouldn't recommend books like Crime and Punishment, for example, to beginner readers. I think that would be too complicated. Now, when I'm talking about classics, then I think with time, the definition of classics also changes. So, I would also include a sort of I would also include works of authors like Gabriel Garcia Marquez's Love in the Times of Cholera, or Paulo Coelho's works for that matter, even Haruki Murakami's works for that matter, in this list. So classics are a must read for beginner readers. The third kind of books that I would recommend to a beginner reader are poetry books. Now, guys, poetry, of course, is not easy to read, but the plus point of reading a poetry book is that, unlike a novel or a short story collection, you don't have to read it in one go. You don't have to, give a lot of you don't have to really commit a lot of time, together. You can just read a couple of poems when you get free. Even if you're free for 10 minutes, you can just browse through, 2, 3 poems and then get back to the book whenever you feel like. So in terms of time commitment, and, in terms of time commitment, I would say, not in terms of commitment of mental energy, reading poetry is very flexible. It allows you to read, whenever you want to read. So I think for people on the go, and in between work, poetry books are a very sort of handy medium. Why I recommend poetry to beginners is, again, because poetry can work, the kind of language, if you pay attention to the kind of language that's used in poetry, the way the words flow, the imagery, the metaphors, and the lyrical composition and all that. It can work wonders for your creative writing skills and also for your powers of creative expression. Poetry is also a very unconventional medium. A lot of poems have very unconventional themes, topics, and also very unconventional imagery and metaphors. So if you're somebody with a creative bent of mind, even if you're new to reading, if you're a beginner in reading, vocabulary is limited, you would still enjoy the act of reading a poem. The act of reading a poem also challenges your mental faculties, because it's all about interpretation. And it's like solving a puzzle. Poems are not so easy to interpret. So it's like, putting together the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. And it's also like mathematics in a way, because poems are known for their brevity. One of the most compact mediums. Some people like write really short poems. So in a couple of lines, they're talking about so many things. So I think reading poetry is also good mental exercise for a beginner reader. And like I said, in terms of time commitment, you require very less time commitment. So beginner readers who are usually not that disciplined to complete a book at one go, I think poetry is a perfect place to start. Especially, I would say, that if you buy beautiful poetry books with illustrations, that will be perfect for a beginner reader, because, of course, the visual appeal balances the words, and then, the whole text and words wouldn't be so intimidating if it's also accompanied by visuals. The fourth kind of books that I would recommend to a beginner reader are biographies. Now, guys, cliched as it may sound, biographies sell like hotcakes, and there's a reason for that, because it's mostly the kind of stuff that people can relate to. Of course, like all non-fiction books, most non-fiction books have some stuff which maybe people can relate to. But biographies, I would specially recommend to beginner readers, because, there's that human interest element. And when you're reading about a person, it's easier for you to get drawn into that world, rather than reading some really complicated, abstract, or, indirect non-fiction stuff. So I would totally recommend biographies to beginner readers. You should connect, sort of the biography with your hobbies. So you should buy the kind of biographies which go with your field of interest. For example, if you're into politics and international affairs, then you could go for the biographies of political leaders, human rights activists, whatever it is that appeals to you. Or if you're into art, fashion, cinema, anything, you can buy. You should go for biographies of people who are sort of thought leaders in these fields and whose lives are inspiring, whose lives appeal to you. Reading a biography of a person you admire is like getting one-on-one with your icon, with your hero, so to say. So I think for a beginner reader, the biographies can put you in a really emotional frame as well. I think for beginner readers, biography are a perfect choice. The last genre of books I would recommend to beginner readers, this is not exactly a genre, but kinds of books you can say, are works by local authors. Now, guys, trust me, as everybody should read works by local authors, but it really works brilliantly for people who are new to reading, because a lot of local authors actually, are well known in your city. And a lot of book events, they invite you to a lot of book events. So, once you read the book, you can actually sort of put in the context, also, gather some information about their life. You can actually go and attend their readings and meet them. So, a lot of book readings happen in various cities, and often in book readings, local authors are invited, including both the famous ones and the not so famous ones. So reading works by local authors, helps you connect the dots much easily. Of course, there's an interest element, because there'll be a lot of references to your local places and, the local history and culture of where you live. Maybe you already know about some of those things. So I think it will lead you towards reading more. For example, one of my favorite authors, Ruskin, lives right nearby my city in Missouri, and I've read so many books by Ruskin Bonds, and I can immediately connect because his books, nearly all his books have descriptions of Dehra and Missouri, so I can, sort of those emotions, they evoke emotions in me and also associations, and gives me a sense of belonging to read those works. So as a beginner author, as a beginner reader, like I said, it's sort of anyways challenging for you to develop the habit of reading. So having the extra element of interest and association, the fact that you can sort of connect yourself with what the writer is trying to say, it kind of motivates you to read more. So yeah, I would certainly recommend local authors to new readers. So guys, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you like the content, please press the like button and please do subscribe to the channel. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.